everybody, and welcome to the Week in Review, where we take a look at the week that was and discuss our thoughts in an unscripted manner about some of the key bits of news that have popped up. We were off last week as a result of an illness. I just could not record on a Friday, but we are back this week, and there is some pretty interesting news to share to boot. First up, E3 news. We do have an announcement that E3 will run as a digital-only event from June 12 to 15 this year. And E3 has been able to get all of its buddies along to show stuff off. Well, most of them anyway. There will be Capcom, Koch Media, Konami, Nintendo, Microsoft, Take-Two Interactive, Ubisoft, and Warner Brothers. And that's just the initial list. There will be more apparently down the track. One that will not be showing up, though, is Sony. Sony has been away from E3 the last couple of years, and they look like they're going to continue to do so this year. Now, there was some hope, I guess, with COVID over the last year that this year's E3 would be a live event again, and that's not to be the case. But I do think with E3 in particular, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the only reason that E3 kind of exists these days is to raise hype for games that are coming, and you can show videos of trailers and whatever over the internet with no problem whatsoever. So the need to actually be at a physical event is just not there. I mean, it's not the same industry event it used to be where a lot of stuff would happen behind closed doors. There are other events for that now happen, Gamescom being a good one, Game Developer Conference. There's a lot of backdoor dealings that go on at other conferences other than E3 now. So E3's lost a bit of relevance as an industry event, and now it is much more a marketing focused showcase, and that's what we're going to see with this one. Unfortunately, we also had the news, I think it was last week, that Tokyo Game Show would not be would not be a physical event this year, and I'm a little bit disappointed about that one, to be honest. I do like going to TGS and actually being on the floor and getting hands-on time, and it is a big opportunity for me to meet up with all the Japanese developers. So I won't be doing that again this year, unfortunately, and I'm a bit annoyed with that. The vaccines for COVID cannot come fast enough. Next up, we have news regarding 6 Days in Fallujah. And I know we've already covered this game in this segment, but given how controversial it is proving to be, I'm sure we'll be talking about it quite often into the future as well. It is going to create a lot of discourse, is the thing. This time around, this week, the news is that a prominent Muslim advocacy organization within the US called the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, has called for Sony, Microsoft, and Steam to not allow the game onto their platforms. In other words, not ban it, just not release it on PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam. And the reason for that is they call it an Arab murder simulator, and they are concerned that the game is going to normalize violence against Muslims in America and around the world. That's according to the statement. Now, naturally, this has caused a lot of controversy because how dare companies try and censor things and so on and so forth. It is one of those blow-ups, and they happen all the time. The thing is, and my perspective on this is that I am 99% sure that this game is not going to be a healthy, wholesome game. I don't think they're going to treat the material with any particular justice. I would imagine that my review for this game, if I actually bother to review it, will read very much like a Call of Duty game, only less amusing because it won't have the same sense of nonsense fun that Call of Duty games tend to have in and amongst their propaganda stuff. I think this game is going to be quite brutally revisionist in tone. I think it is going to be a nasty, nasty game. But by the same token, I don't agree with not putting this game on those platforms. If the developer or the publisher wants to put these games on these platforms, then they should. And here's why. It's not because I think that they're going to be healthy games. It's because if they're not there, how can I criticize them? Not just me, but, how can people criticize these games? How can we talk about them? How can we really dig into why these games are an issue if we can't access them? If we're just relying on assumptions about these video games before we sit down and talk about them, then we're not really going to be able to enhance the discussion in any way. And this is a topic we need to talk about. We need to talk about the revisionism of military history in the West, particularly out of America. We need to be talking about military propaganda and the way it works in video games and stuff, because it's there and it doesn't get talked about enough, in no small part because people refuse to engage with this stuff if it looks bad to them on the surface. And this game is, to me, an example of that. I don't think that I am going to think that this game is good. I think I am going to be quite critical of this game, but until I sit down and play it, I can't really delve into it, which is why I think that it should be available so that we can access it and we can critique it, just like any other work of art. It's not a matter of censorship, it's a matter of criticism, and if we can't criticize something, we can't determine why it is a problem. Now for some blissfully happy news, the anime for Blue Reflections is out now. I haven't had a chance to start to watch it, so I don't know if it is one episode per week or they've just dumped the entire season and you can watch it all in one go right now. I'm hoping for the latter because I'd like to binge through it this weekend, but the main thing is it is out. And after Blue Reflection itself was a very underperforming game, I believe is the best way to put it, it didn't really turn heads. It was generally kind of overlooked for what people assumed that it would be. That a lot of people kind of missed it because they didn't realize what it was actually about. They thought it was this, nasty fan servicey thing, but it's actually this really beautiful kind of magical girls meets Persona experience. So the original game really flew under the radar and became something of a cult hit amongst a very small group of JRPG fans, and we didn't think we'd ever see another Blue Reflection. It did seem like this was a game that was too easy for Koei Tecmo and the developer Gust to just not touch again. But then they went and announced this anime, which came out of nowhere and really excited us all as fans. And then on the back of that, we now actually have 2 new video games on the way as well, a proper sequel, Blue Reflection 2, as well as a mobile game. So it looks like Gust is reinvesting in this series, giving it a second shot, and hopefully it gets the attention it deserves. This time it's got the same artist back, Mil Kishida, although the anime has a different artist, I believe, but also very attractive art. These games are all very beautiful in terms of their design. They have this real lovely sentimental touch to them, and I'm just hoping this anime can deliver on that as well. I don't generally get excited for anime new seasons. When they land, I'll go and watch them if they look interesting to me, but I don't look forward to anime when it comes, mostly because I don't follow it that closely, so I miss a lot of stuff that comes out. But this is one anime that, from a game series, that means a lot to me, that I think I'm really, really hoping for. I'm really hoping this turns out well. Okay, so next up we need to talk about Genshin Impact, because this is a free-to-play Chinese game, RPG. It's been very popular since it released last year, for good reason. It is expansive in scope, it is gorgeous to look at, and it is pretty decent with the free-to-play stuff as well. I have a review on digitallydownloaded.net, but like all free-to-play games, it's pretty time-consuming and I just don't have the time for it, so I haven't played it for a while. I do admire what the developer has done with it. Anyway, they are trending for all the wrong reasons on Twitter this week. There was a hashtag that popped up called Boycott Genshin Impact, and as you can probably guess, that means there are a lot of people who are very unhappy with it. And you look at the tweets, there are 2 kind of core reasons for this. Firstly, the developers are being accused of whitewashing, and secondly, they're being accused of appropriating or using Native American cultures in a way that is insensitive. And if you look at the tweets, they're specifically saying, how dare they, be so insensitive towards indigenous people. Now, the big problem with all of this is that the people that are being critical of the developers here seem to be forgetting that they're not American. When you're talking about native cultures in relevance to a Chinese company, they're not talking about the Chinese indigenous peoples, they're talking about American indigenous people. And when you talk about whitewashing doesn't really exist in China. They have a different sense of aesthetics and it might look like whitewashing to a Western audience, but culturally it's a different thing, and you can't apply American values to a game that comes from a different country and then expect that the game is going to just conform to fit what American values are. So I think that this is a good example of the problem that a lot of games out of Asia have, and Japan has had this problem for a long time as well. People analyze these games as though, from the perspective of their own culture. So we, from the West, look at these games in a lot of cases and try and analyze them as though they were created by local developers, without really trying to understand the cultural background that resulted in this game. So this hashtag that has popped up is really quite insensitive to non-American game developers, and doesn't really try to understand the differences in culture and what that might mean for how a game ends up looking, playing, and the kind of the themes that they see in those games. Okay, so to finish up, we're going to talk about Intel, who has been out there talking about something that is just so hideously bad that you have to laugh about it. It just shows that these Silicon Valley companies have absolutely no idea about responsibility, social awareness, and all that kind of stuff. So Intel's got this new tool, which they're calling Bleep. And with Bleep, it's an AI-assisted series of sliders that allow you to turn up and down how much offensive stuff you experience within your game. As you get to, the AI system can tell when something offensive is about to be said over voice chat or whatever, and it will bleep it out for you so you don't hear it. And there is a huge range of these sliders. So just to run through some of them, there's a slider for ableism and body shaming. There's one for aggression. There's one for LGBTQ hate. There's one for misogyny. There's one, you can turn the N-word on or off. There's a slider for sexually explicit language. And of course, there's one for white nationalism. But all of this raises the question, does Intel think that these things are a problem because of the personal response for them? If you are able to turn white nationalism down, does that mean that white nationalism is no longer a problem within the video game industry and the video game communities? Is it really just Intel believes that the only reason that this stuff is something you need to be concerned with is because some people might find it individually offensive, and not the fact that it actually speaks to a pretty toxic behavior and attitude that video game industry companies should really be trying to do something about? And it just goes to show, again, Intel, like every other Silicon Valley company out there, is not interested in taking responsibility for the culture that it is actively creating within the video game community. Rather than take responsibility for it themselves, they're just going to shove everything off to the individual and say, well, you know, you can choose to turn white nationalism off, so if you don't and then you experience it, it's really on you. So it really does show a lack of awareness and a lack of basic social manners within these companies. I just can't believe that this is Silicon Valley's answer to toxic communities, is just to allow some people to individually choose to turn them off. Anyway, that's enough for this video. Thank you as always for tuning in. Do let me know your own thoughts in the comments. Let's have a good chat about the news of the week. Civil chat, of course. Let's not need these Intel sliders. But yeah, thank you as always for watching. Please do click that like and subscribe button if you enjoy my videos. That way you'll see them all as we do them. And if you do click that, you'll also be able to jump onto the streams when I do them, because you'll get a little notification to say, hey, he's streaming right now. Please also consider backing me on Patreon if you enjoy my work. You can do so for even $1 a month or more if you'd like, and that will go directly into helping me to continue to grow what I'm doing with this channel. In addition, I do have some exciting new exclusive stuff coming for Patreons to look forward to, so there is a little bit of an incentive there to back me if you feel like I'm doing good work. Finally, if you want to support us in another way, you can buy the DD merchandise. We've got this wonderful mascot character, DD, and we've got a lot of really high quality goods that you can grab off our store. Again, we get a percentage of each sale, and that will help me to continue to grow this channel as well. Thank you as always. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on the streams, and we will also see you next week.